Hi, I'm Quinn Latham. I'm 32 years old, and this is the story of how I was publicly erased by my own blood at the very event meant to honor the man I loved most in this world. I'm the only grandchild of Richard Latham, founder of Latham House Publishing, a once small, fiercely independent press that focused on academic books no one else dared to touch. When my parents passed away in a car crash when I was 19, I moved in with my grandfather. That man became my world. The company had been floundering for years by the time I joined. Big houses were eating up the market. University presses were consolidating. My grandfather was stubborn, still editing manuscripts with a red pen, refusing to go digital, as he called it. But I saw something in the rubble. So I stayed. I took night classes in digital archiving, taught myself metadata management, SEO, and rebuilt the entire back-end catalog from scratch. I helped turn his collection into an academic treasure trove online. Slowly, we started getting noticed again, mostly by small liberal arts colleges and overseas institutions looking for niche work. There was no salary, no glory, just long nights, old coffee, and a man who would sometimes shuffle into the room with tears in his eyes just whispering, "Thank you for not letting this die." But then he did. Last fall, at 87, my grandfather passed away quietly in his sleep. I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. He left me a letter and the original mission statement of the company, handwritten in ink so faded it looked like breath. I cried so hard I got sick. But once I recovered, I did what he would have wanted. I planned a centennial celebration for Latham House. 100 years since it published its first book. A night to honor him. I booked a university hall, reached out to past authors, printed menus with his favorite quotes on them. That's when Ruth appeared, my grandfather's estranged daughter, my great-aunt, who hadn't spoken to him in nearly 2 decades. She was a branding executive for a biotech firm in New York. No one even knew if she'd attend the funeral. But 3 weeks before the event, she emailed the board. "Given my seniority and bloodline, I will be stepping in to ensure this company's future." Just like that. No conversation, no gratitude, not even a damn condolence. At first, I thought it was posturing. I still had signing authority, payroll control, and had worked directly with all active authors for nearly 10 years. She hadn't so much as logged into the archive system once. Surely no one would take her seriously. But I underestimated one thing: image. Ruth knew how to look like leadership. She swept into the office in tailored suits, scheduled press interviews about intergenerational legacy, and started posting on LinkedIn like she was the visionary keeping Grandpa's dream alive. And then came the night of the celebration. I wore black. Not because I was in mourning, though I still was, but because that man deserved respect. I helped arrange every detail, from seating charts to a slideshow of old office photos. 10 minutes before the event began, Ruth pulled me aside and said flatly, "You won't be speaking tonight. The board feels it's best we present a unified voice." I blinked. "You mean you?" I said quietly. She didn't deny it, just smiled and adjusted her necklace. "Let's not make this awkward." So I sat. In the 3rd row, my name wasn't even in the program. She went on stage, gave a 15-minute speech about innovation, transition, and honoring tradition through transformation. She never mentioned me once. But it was what came next that broke me. The new CEO slideshow. Slide after slide of key contributors, photoshopped images, quotes from authors, graphs and projections. I wasn't in a single frame. Not one mention. 8 years of work. Deleted like I never existed. And then Ruth leaned into the mic with that flawless corporate voice and said, "The next century of Latham House will leave behind sentimentality and lean fully into the future." And right there, in front of academics, authors, family friends, and donors, she buried my grandfather's memory and mine in one breath. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly. All heads turned. And I said nothing. I just walked out the side door. But what Ruth didn't know was, while she was erasing me in public, I had already started writing her ending in private. When I walked out of that auditorium, I thought I was doing it to protect my dignity. But later that night, as I sat on the floor of my tiny apartment, still in that same black dress, shoes off, knees pulled to my chest, I realized something worse. I hadn't just been humiliated, I'd been erased. It was like I'd never existed in that company. Like my grandfather had never trusted me, mentored me, loved me. Ruth didn't just push me out of the picture. She burned the entire album. The emails started coming in the next morning. Polite, impersonal messages from people I'd worked alongside for years. Thank you for your service, Quinn. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. Please return your company laptop and badge by end of week. No phone calls. No one asking if I was okay. Just a quiet exit strategy, like I was some failed intern they were trying to forget ever happened. To be honest, I didn't get out of bed for 3 days. I'd given 8 years of my life to Latham House. I'd built their digital archives, saved them from bankruptcy, brought in new authors who'd been ignored by traditional publishers. I stayed up all night troubleshooting database issues. I hand-packed book shipments when we were short on staff. I skipped birthdays, relationships, even a family wedding just to make sure deadlines were met. And yet, none of it mattered. Ruth had the money, the face, the vision. I had silence. The worst part? My grandfather's will. I'd avoided reading it. I wasn't ready. But after 3 days of radio static and microwave dinners, I forced myself to open the envelope his lawyer had mailed me. There was no inheritance, no title transfer, no official stake in the company. Just a note in his shaky handwriting. Quinn, the world will try to make you small. Let it. Then rebuild something they can't touch. At first, I was angry, furious. I felt like I'd been loyal to a ghost who didn't even think enough of me to protect what we built together. But then I started thinking about the timing. The final 2 years of his life, he'd been getting forgetful. Not in a dangerous way. Just little things. Misplacing notes. Calling our authors by the wrong name. I'd covered for him a dozen times without saying a word. So maybe he meant to do more. Maybe he thought he had more time. But Ruth didn't wait. She saw the opening and took it. 2 weeks after the celebration, I got a LinkedIn notification. Latham House had a new marketing campaign. Legacy reinvented, powered by AI, led by vision. And in every single post, Ruth's face. I almost deleted the app. But then I noticed something strange. Buried in a carousel post about our modern catalog was a screenshot of our back-end archive, the one I built. And right there, under the interface I custom-coded in Python, was a copyright footer, one that didn't match the Latham House name. I zoomed in. Property of Lantern Grove Media, LLC. I blinked. Lantern Grove. It took me a second to remember. It was a placeholder company I set up 3 years ago. A legal shell I used to test a project on digital distribution. I hadn't thought about it in ages. But apparently, I never transferred ownership of the archive. Latham House was using it, my system, without a current license. Suddenly, my heart was in my throat, because I remembered something else. Last year, Ruth refused to renew the license agreement I sent her. Said we'd figure it out later. She never did, which meant they were now illegally using my software as the backbone of their new model. My jaw actually dropped. I sat frozen in my kitchen chair, hands shaking over my laptop. They wanted to erase me? Fine. But now they were building their entire future on something that was still legally mine. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not out of revenge. Not yet. But because I finally had leverage. And Ruth? She had no idea what was coming, but I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at my desk, the glow of my laptop lighting up every line on my tired face, rereading the documents, the database, the shell company, the expired license. All of it. Over and over. Like if I blinked, it would vanish and I'd go back to being no one again. But it was real. They were using my system, my architecture, my code, my server routes, without permission. without payment, without credit. It was like being stabbed with my own knife. The next morning, I drafted a letter. Not a lawsuit. Not yet. Just a formal cease and desist. Polite. Professional, but firm. I attached the registration documents for Lantern Grove Media, the expired licensing agreement, and an itemized breakdown of every violation currently in play. I CC'd Ruth, and her board, and their legal counsel. Then I hit send. I wish I could say I felt triumphant, but mostly I just felt sick. Because here's the thing no one tells you about standing up for yourself. It doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it just feels like grief wearing armor. I didn't hear anything for a day. Then 2. Then on the 3rd morning, a single email pinged into my inbox. From Ruth Langford. Subject, let's be adults about this. She didn't even say hello, just jumped straight in. Quinn, I find your tone disappointing. Grandpa would be ashamed of how you're handling this. If you'd like to discuss a quiet resolution without damaging the Latham name, we can talk. Quiet resolution. Like this was just a misunderstanding between coworkers, not a calculated erasure of everything I had worked for. I didn't reply. Instead, I watched. I watched as their website went down for maintenance. I watched as their social media team stopped posting anything new. I watched as academic forums I belonged to started whispering about possible copyright issues. And then, 1 week later, the real punch hit. Someone leaked the full cease and desist letter to a publishing watchdog blog. Not me, I swear. But someone inside that company, someone who still remembered what I'd done for them, sent it anonymously. Suddenly, I was getting interview requests. People who had ignored me at the celebration were tagging me online, asking if the rumors were true. But I didn't say a word. I stayed quiet. Until a new press release dropped on Latham House's website the following Monday. Effective immediately, Ruth Langford will be stepping down as acting CEO of Latham House Publishing. Just like that. No apology. No statement of wrongdoing. Just vanished. Like I had been. And for a moment, it felt like justice. Until I clicked on the new board listing and saw my own name. I blinked, refreshed the page, read it again. Quinn Latham, Interim Director of Digital Assets. I didn't ask for it. I didn't apply. I hadn't spoken to anyone. But they put me back. Not because they believed in me, not because they were sorry, but because now they needed me. And that hurt in a way I can't fully explain. Because I didn't want to be needed. I wanted to be seen. I wanted my grandfather's photo to be next to mine in that hallway. I wanted someone to admit they were wrong. I wanted, God, I don't know, something that felt like belonging again. But instead, I just stared at my name on their website. Cold, functional, strategic. And then came the twist I never saw coming. I got a package. No return address. Just a small box with my name handwritten on top. Inside was a single manila envelope. And inside that were the original, signed, notarized documents from my grandfather. Documents that named me as the sole inheritor of his personal archive. His annotated manuscripts, private letters, and founder's notes. Stuff no one even knew existed. Along with a short handwritten message. I know Ruth will try. But you, Quinn, you're the voice of this house now. And I broke. I just sat on the floor and cried. Because for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel erased. I felt chosen. If you've ever been pushed out of something you helped build, if you've ever watched someone else take your place like you were never there, just know, I see you. And sometimes you don't have to fight to be remembered. You just have to survive long enough to be undeniable. I didn't want a war. I wanted peace. A quiet life. A job where I was valued. A legacy I could carry without it weighing on my chest like a damn stone. But Ruth forced my hand. And if she thought I was going to play by her rules now, she clearly never paid attention to what I'd built when nobody was watching. After the leak and her sudden resignation, the board scrambled to save face. That's when they added my name back to the website and offered me the temporary title of interim director. It was a weak move, honestly. A PR patch job to calm the whispers in the academic press. I didn't respond. I let them sweat. Instead, I went back to Lantern Grove, my small LLC that had started as a side project and was now quietly hosting one of the most valuable digital academic archives on the East Coast. For the first time, I saw what I had in my hands. Not just leverage, infrastructure, relationships, trust. Most of the Latham House authors had worked with me directly over the years. Many had written to me privately after the celebration, confused or upset. I didn't respond at the time, but now I did. I sent one email to each of them. No begging, no bitterness, just honesty. I'm building something separate. Author first, transparent contracts, full control over your digital rights. If you want to talk, I'm here. And they responded, one by one. Some just said thank you. Some asked if they could share their horror stories. But a few, a brave, brilliant few, sent me drafts. New work, untouched, waiting for a home. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't about reclaiming what I'd lost. This was about building better. So I got to work. I filed the paperwork to expand Lantern Grove Media into a full publishing imprint. I hired 2 editors I trusted from the old team. Quietly, off the books at first. I reached out to a freelance designer who used to do our cover art before Ruth fired him in favor of a branding consultant. And I registered a new domain. Something simple, clean, lanterngrovebooks.com. Then I made one phone call I'd been avoiding. The university library where my grandfather's annotated collection was archived. The one that had been sponsored by Latham House for over 40 years. I asked to speak to their acquisitions chair. I told her the truth. I emailed the documents. Proof that the archive wasn't part of the Latham estate, but had been willed directly to me. She paused. Then she said, "Would you like to discuss transferring the naming rights?" I smiled. 2 weeks later, the press release went out. The Latham Collection is proud to partner with Lantern Grove Books as its new steward and primary publisher of annotated academic works. Ruth didn't call. She didn't need to, because later that night I got a message from one of her old assistants, a screenshot. It was Ruth's private group chat with a few board members, sent accidentally to the wrong thread. All it said was, I told them she was emotional. I didn't think she was dangerous. And here's the twist. The one that still gives me chills. Buried in my grandfather's founder notes, among the letters and scribbles and half-finished outlines, was a page labeled Contingency. It was a legal memorandum, written a year before his death. Quietly notarized, never enacted. In it, he outlined a transfer clause. If any board member attempted to consolidate the company by excluding his designated successor, me, the archive and all associated research partners would immediately void their licensing agreements with Latham House. He had tried to protect me. He had just run out of time. But now, with the new partnership in place, that clause was retroactively triggered, which meant Latham House lost every active academic partnership they had left. One signature from me, and it was done. And in that moment, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like I had just buried the last piece of him. I closed the folder. I turned off the lights. And I cried. Not for revenge, but because winning shouldn't feel this lonely. The day the final papers went through, it rained. Not a heavy storm. Just that soft, steady kind of rain that feels like the sky is exhaling. I stood outside the courthouse, folder in hand, watching the water bead across the glass as people rushed past with umbrellas. But I didn't move. Because I had just signed the last document that officially transferred every remaining Latham archive asset to Lantern Grove Media. The board voted unanimously. They didn't even try to fight. Not after the academic partnerships pulled out. Not after the emails leaked. Not after I made it clear I didn't want their name, their company, or their apologies. Just what was rightfully mine. Ruth, to this day, has never spoken to me directly. I know she settled with the board quietly. I know she was forced to return a significant portion of her severance when the misuse of IP was proven. And I know, through whispers, not confirmation, that she's currently under investigation by an academic ethics committee for intentional misrepresentation of archival ownership. That's a long way of saying, her reputation is dust. But here's the part no one tells you. When the moment of justice finally lands, it's not fireworks. It's not applause. It's quiet. It's you, a folder, a drizzle, and the realization that you don't need them to know you won. You already do. That night, I hosted a private dinner for the team that had followed me. Just 12 of us, all crammed into my apartment, eating takeout off mismatched plates. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't branded. But it was real. There was laughter, relief. And when I raised my glass to thank them, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Belonging. Later that week, I got invited to speak at a publishing conference in DC, the kind I used to just work the registration table for. The panel title was When Legacy Turns Against You, Building Outside the System. I didn't write a speech. I just spoke. I talked about invisible labor, about what it's like to watch people take credit for your sweat, about how betrayal in business feels a lot like betrayal in family. Because sometimes it is. And I ended with this. They tried to write me out. But I kept the pen. The room was dead silent. Then came the applause. But the moment that stuck with me most was after, when a young woman, maybe 23, came up to me and said, "Thank you." I thought I was crazy for feeling like I'd been erased too. And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore either. The truth is, closure doesn't come from watching them fall. It comes from rising on your own terms, in your own way, until the people who left you behind can't help but see everything they lost. The lesson I learned? If they can take it from you easily, it was never really yours. So build slow, build quiet, and for God's sake, keep receipts. If any part of this hit close to home, if you've ever had to reclaim what was taken from you or just want to share your own story, I'd honestly love to read it in the comments. This community makes people like me feel a little less alone. And if you want more stories like this, feel free to stick around. I've got more than a few, but for now, I'm going to go pour myself a drink. And finally, sleep like someone who got her name back.